mental frame is going to be the ability to toggle between different states of mind. And so let me give you the practices first so that I don't get accused of being an intellectual to the point of, curing insomnia right during this podcast. The first one is that morning sunlight in your eyes should be a non-negotiable thing 360 days out of the year. If it's raining, stand under an overhang. I'm very unsympathetic to I wake up and it's early and then I got to drive to work. Stand outside for 5 minutes. I got plenty of rest last night, so I'm not ornery about this, but I've grown a little bit exhausted of I can't do that because I've got kids. Take them outside with you. They need this too. That sets a cortisol increase in the morning, which is a healthy cortisol increase that provides wakefulness, triggers your metabolism in the proper direction. If that cortisol spike happens too late because you didn't view light, then you step out during noon too often. Remember, one day is no big deal, but step out in the sunlight too often late in the day, you have a delayed cortisol spike, which is associated with insomnia, depression. There are good data on this. So get that morning sunlight 360 days out of the year. You will thank me, I promise. Everything gets better. Now, it's a slow, subtle shift. It's not like popping, 1,000 milligrams of L-tyrosine and drinking a double espresso and going to the gym. It's a foundational practice. So I like to think of it as it raises the tide so that your boat can leave harbor. That's how I think of it, rather than, this is like putting another outboard motor on my vessel. Okay. So that's the first one. And the second one is a little bit of a broader category, but it's get sleep right. You have, until you're sleeping well, 80% of the time or more, get your sleep right. And for this, I can just defer people. We do have a newsletter. It's completely free. But we have our privacy policy. We don't share your email. It's at hubermanlab.com. Just go to newsletter. All the prior newsletters are listed. There's the key tips for sleep. You can watch the Master Your Sleep episode, or you can just download that 12 steps for optimal sleep. Yes, there is a segment on supplementation with some of the considerations and warnings. There's also sections on non-sleep deep rest protocols, links to those. So get your sleep right and get that light in your eyes early in the day. If you're a blind person, there's another protocol. I've done some work with blind people to try and help them with this. Many blind people still maintain the cells in their eyes that can set these mechanisms. Yeah, so mental frame is something that I don't think has been formalized in the kind of health and fitness optimization. Mental frame is so key. And I will say, and I want to be very respectful of everything, all the work that's preceded when I showed up. But, a lot of the stuff that's out there in the self-help and business literature, it frankly is kind of nipping at the margins of some of this stuff. And look, I don't want to throw out names because it becomes disparaging. I think the one person who really deserves a nod, who's truly a pioneer, there are two people who are incredible pioneers in this space. And one is Cal Newport, right? So Good They Can't Ignore You is an incredible book. Everyone should be required to read that book. Deep Work is this, I'm essentially paraphrasing some of the protocols from Deep Work, but Cal, who I don't know, have never met, but have great respect for, is a computer science professor back east. It's about setting mental frame, and context switching is dangerous. So he has a book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, which was written some years ago. And that was more towards not trying to find your passion, but getting really good at skills. But Deep Work is an excellent book. He's not on social media, but he has given some TED Talks about not succumbing to distraction so you can do work that actually moves the needle. Yeah, then there's another one, which is A World Without Email that he wrote recently. Here's the key essence of the Cal Newport work, okay? The key essence of it as it relates to mental frame is that the brain is extremely good and the body at context switching. I could be doing this podcast right now, and if a fire alarm goes off or someone comes knocking on the door, I can switch up my context and respond to that. But 90% of the work that moves the needle, meaning that we are rewarded for or that enriches professional life and relationships, we used to talk about this, about mindfulness and presence, but it's really about getting the brain to start doing certain operations more in a more facile way. And this is why habits are important, but because going to the gym is different than reviewing a paper or writing a scientific paper, is different than podcasting. or being a guest on a podcast for that matter. So what happens is early in the day, when you get the download from sleep, you identify a few things that are key. You're starting to funnel your neural networks toward what I'm calling frame setting. And what you're not doing is allowing something that came in from the external environment to adjust your frame. So you get a depth of connection with the work, a depth, like I knew I was doing this podcast today at noon, and I wasn't walking and thinking about it, but I set that as a goalpost. And because I wrote it down, my brain is orienting toward what I need to do so that when we clip on, we're ready to go. And so mental frames are very important. Context switching is deadly. I'm stealing Cal's words, so forgive me, Cal. Some people will put freedom, the computer program, so that they are not able to engage with the internet. This device, which I've turned off, or I guess it is on, but it's on airplane mode for the podcast, I try and keep away from me for the first half of the day. Very hard, especially when you need to post on social media, but I try. And I want to have, here's the goal in the morning to make this simple. I want to have one 90-minute block that I completely conquer, that is where I experience immense resistance to do something other than what I'm doing, but that I stay in noodling away, or gnawing away would be the better word, at writing something or reading something or trying to comprehend something. And you have to be very careful. The moment you walk to the restroom and then maybe like wash your hands and look yourself in the mirror, and then you're like, oh, I got this weird hair growing out of my cheek or something, you're starting to switch mental frame. And so 90 minutes seems like nothing, but it is remarkable what you can accomplish with this. But the more important aspect is that in that exercise of getting good at what we call no-go operations. In the brain, you have go and no-go operations. In pushing aside things and enforcing those blinders, you're able to bring that same mental frame to other things later in the day and in life, and you're able to engage it much quicker. It's sort of like if you drive a car and you've never been up to 110 miles an hour, you don't really know how to get around a semi in front of you that's braking fast and you're on a downhill. But if you have to do it, you can do it. You're comfortable at speed and you're comfortable braking. And so this mental frame thing is not just about the work you are able to do in that 90 minutes. It's about getting better at doing deep work, even for shorter bouts. Because as the day goes on, we all have this experience, right? Things start coming in, we start getting bombarded, and we're starting to get that kind of fragmentation of our goals, and we're kind of getting pulled off. And some people, the peak time is in the afternoon. Some people it's in the morning. Some people it's late at night, but you're getting yanked off center. And so you have to be able to recognize just how delicious and effective that state is. And then you can apply it later. And I'll let people use their imagination, but this comes into use in many aspects of life that have nothing to do with work. Okay. Like being able to stay at that groove with somebody, or in some interaction, or on a run. I mean, use your imagination. This is the important thing is it's all the same circuit. It's this engagement of the prefrontal cortex, which is saying duration, path, outcome, meaning how long should I do this? What path should I take? What outcomes am I getting in real time? And not getting pulled off center by someone else's DPO, as I call them, DPOs. Incidentally or not so incidentally, I've been fortunate enough to do some work with the special operations community in Canada and the US. In addition to those guys being really good at shoot, move, and communicate, the really exceptional ones know how to flip this switch on. We think of it as like grit, resilience, and mental toughness. And yes, they're all gritty, but there are a lot of gritty people out there. The difference is the ability to take your environment, narrow that environment, and be effective, and cut a fine slice through something and then stop and move to something else. That's a mental operation that involves multiple circuits, multiple neurotransmitters. We couldn't say just dopamine, just epinephrine or something like that. It's going to be that, but a bunch of other things too. And so 90 minutes, learn that 90-minute battle, and it takes time. And then you get very, very good at it. So I'll podcast for 2 hours. I drop into that. That's the state I'm in when I podcast. So, okay. So just to make sure I close the hatch on that. So you asked for 2 tools. I gave 3: morning sunlight, master your sleep. You can see that newsletter for the tools. And then this 90-minute, and look, some days it goes better than others. But remember, it's not just about what you accomplish. It's about getting into those frames and you're controlling it. This is, I guess I wish I had said this before, is that you are setting the beginning, middle, and end of that frame. That's what's key. It's not happening because someone else said game time, noon on Sunday, and you're showing up. Anyone can do that with some practice. What you're learning how to do is flip the switch. You're learning how to engage that. But you have to be very judicious in your use of this circuitry. You can't do it for 12 hours a day. So that's when I do email and all the other stuff. Okay. And 2 90-minute bouts, maybe. One last point about that, and then I'll tell you what I suck at, but there isn't time in the universe to get at all of it. There's a second newsletter there, which is about optimizing learning and plasticity that touches into some of the details and some free links and protocols related to that. Also at the newsletter, it's the October newsletter. So 3 things that have been helpful for this, but okay, I'm dreadfully poor at follow-up communications. I'm really bad. I really like comments. I try and respond, especially on Instagram. I like to give people, if you ask a professor a question, they're going to give you an attempt at an answer. Whether or not it's accurate or not, they're going to try. They're going to try and get it right. So I have to control my impulse to respond to everything just for sake of time so I can do the big important things. I'm a terrible cook. I'm an absolutely terrible cook. I mean, I'm fortunate that I have someone in my life who's an exceptional cook, but I am an absolutely dreadful cook. I mean, I could destroy toast. I just don't get it right. I don't have the patience.